Welcome back to Ethereal Material, where the mystical meets the practical.
We are Priscilla and Carla, two professional mediums discussing the gap between the seen and the unseen.
All topics are on the table for dissection, and today we're answering listeners' questions and the obligation that seems to come with your intuition.
Yeah. We did get some fan mail through Buzzsprout. So to the listener who wrote in, thank you very much about that.
Thank you.
Um, she or he asked a very interesting question. We won't give you too many details, but this listener had been aware of a sense that a family member would not live a very long life. Over the years, it was discovered that this family member was diagnosed with some mental illness, and in the not too distant past, that intuition that the listener had came true. And the question was, um, do I have some sort of intuition that I needed to develop? And we hear this kind of often, that people have fear about their intuition or fear about, I don't want to know, I don't want to know because they're afraid that they'll see that someone is going to die and then feel like now I have this tremendous, unspeakable responsibility that I have to carry around with me to say something, to do something, to act on it somehow. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think of two things when I think of that. To act on that, meaning when you have the premonition that something bad's going to happen. And then there's the obligation, I think that, or I've seen with people, and I think that even the listener, that then do I need to develop or do I need to do more of this? I'm getting this, so does that mean that I'm carrying the weight of the world if I don't do this? So I feel, because I have had that premonition, I don't predict people's passings, neither do
No.
you, but I have had that uneasy feeling which becomes calm if someone's going to pass. It hasn't happened a lot. And there's no anxiety and fear with it. There's actually just a knowing, and you feel this neutral position. And that's usually when it's most accurate. You can do your best to say hi to them,
Yeah.
call them. But I personally don't feel that if someone is supposed to actually pass, we're not able to intervene.
I would agree.
Unless, I hear, grab that kid out of the street right now, then maybe grab the kid out of the street.
Yeah.
But that it becomes burdensome, and we understand that intuition, but notice that you tend to get the premonitions and that you hold on to that are of the negative nature. How often do you actually hold on to and bring to fruition that I think something good is happening? Because
Yeah.
the minute you do that, you're like, oh, and then you're waiting for the axe to fall
Right.
or something bad to
Yeah.
happen. So I would say then maybe elaborate on the good ones.
And I think, sort of that sense of obligation might be built in because very often, I would say, especially for non-practicing professional psychic mediums, we often don't put together that we're even having a psychic impression until after something has happened, where we go, I had a feeling about that.
Exactly.
We don't go through our lives going, oh, grandma's going to die, grandma's going to die, grandma's going to die, for example. But when we learn of her death, we might go, oh, I had that feeling that, it would be around Christmas time and that would happen. And so we often, as we do with many regular old conversations, I should have said this, or I should have known that, or I should have done this. So hindsight is always 2020. But if I think you're, real, I kind of feel that we have no obligation to develop anything.
Agreed.
If I happen to, pull someone out of a burning vehicle when I'm 13 because I happen to be there, because that's really what intuition is, unless you go seek it out. It's random, the right time in the right place, the right information. Does that obligate me to become an EMT? No.
No, absolutely not. However, it could spark you
It could spark
to say,
right.
oh, I have an interest in this. And then you find you're in a similar position, hopefully not that extreme.
Right.
And there could be you following kind of the lily pads to your career. So that could be, but it isn't an obligation. And I think that that's the big misnomer, that you're getting all this information and you must then do something with it.
Right.
If you want to develop it and that's your intuition, that's fine. But nobody has to do anything, I don't think.
There's something very important that came to pass out of the horror and tragedy of the Salem witch trials back in the 1600s in Massachusetts, which was that finally, after 21 people had been hanged, including a dog, whatever that was, and the governor's wife was accused. And then the governor was like, okay, time out. So all you other people can hang and be witches, but when it comes to when it crosses my threshold, enough is enough. But out of that came a law, which, and I don't know, I don't know how what it's called or written about today, but back then it was called spectral evidence. And we were talking about subjective things today, like what you feel subjectively, nobody else can feel. Like if I have the intuition that my car's on fire and Carla's sitting right next to me and she doesn't see, that's my interpretation. That's my subjectivity. If we look out the window and I'm like, look, Carla, my car's on fire. And she's like, no, it's not. It's staying there perfectly fine. I can't then go sue my mechanic because I had the impression that my car's going to be on fire. So subjective experience is not allowed to be used as evidence against somebody. And back in the day, back in the witch trials, it was called spectral evidence because there were specters, ghosts, there's sort of these movements that nobody else could see. We had to believe these group of hysterical girls. So I don't know why I'm bringing this up. Oh, because there's no real guarantee that what we're interpreting is objectively real either. So if you get the impression or you've had the impression all through your life that a family member isn't going to live a long life, you might be completely wrong. I mean, our intuition is rarely wrong, especially if, well, not rarely, but our interpretation of it can be mistaken. I just did
That gray area, absolutely.
I just did a group where I kept trying to interpret out of, in the general way that when I see impressions as a clairvoyant, 90% of the time they are symbols. And my job as a clairvoyant is to interpret that and say what the interpretation is. I was getting nowhere with these people in the audience. No, you're starting a business, blah, blah, on and on and on. And they're like, we don't know what the hell you're talking about. So finally, I just blurted out, I see somebody pulling knives out of the sand. Well, their son who had passed away lived on the beach and made knives. And, but I didn't take that in as a literal thing to say. I read that as, oh, this is something I'm supposed to interpret. So you have to be very careful about saying the things that you see or that you're aware of. And so, you can do a lot of potentially a lot of damage to someone if you like, oh, I think you're going to die, or I had a dream you're going to die. I mean, that could be a terrible thing for somebody to hear that. I don't know. This has probably happened with you too, where you're doing a reading for someone and a friend's parent comes in or a friend's spirit person comes in.
Yeah.
Right. With some comment about what the friend is doing. And, and we always rush to assure the client we're talking to, look, this will be relevant for you. You are under no obligation to take this message to that friend. If you feel like it's appropriate, if you think you're open to it, go right ahead. But some reason it's going to be relevant for you. That might mean 6 months from now, 6 years from now, your friend comes to you and says, oh, I had this feeling about something. And you will know because the seed has been planted. You can reassure them or you can support them in some sort of way. But I think just like I would not be obligated to pursue a career as an EMT or a trauma worker, if you've had multiple experiences or a nagging sense about something, you are under no obligation to pursue that. Sixth sense information is just that. It's data. It is data. You do with it what you like. It's neutral. It's information. And how we react to it, that's on us. What we do with it, that's on us. That's our responsibility, our emotional responsibility. Whether we take action or not, that's entirely on us. It's just information.
And it's not worth overthinking.
Right.
Should I do it? Should I not do it? Because honestly, if you are supposed to do it, it will naturally flow into that where the thought process isn't even there.
Right.
It just naturally happens. And then, yes, you can study and learn and all of that. But you will know it's not a forced feeling. I do think that when people have the heightened sense, like I'm getting all this information, then I'm worried about my, sibling and then they did pass away. All this, it becomes overwhelming energetically to your system.
Yeah.
Kind of let it just pass by. If you're supposed to, you will. And because I do think you should be using your sixth sense literally all the time.
Right.
I
And you
do.
probably are,
Well, you literally are and don't
you
even
know,
realize
without
it. So
even
your left
realizing,
brain
yeah.
jockeys back and forth and fights it. But you don't have to. I just feel sorry for people that feel the pressure
Mm,
and the confusion and the weight on their shoulders on should I develop this or nobody believes me
right.
and they're going to think I'm nuts because I
Or the
understand
feeling of
that.
guilt that they didn't.
Yeah.
You know, I had this impression that there would be a car accident and I didn't say anything. Well, how could you? You know, and to whom would you say that? And when would that
Right.
be? You know, I think we talked on an earlier podcast about the premonition I had of my dog being hit by a car. And it was years later. It wasn't the original
Right.
dog that I had when I had that premonition, but the dog that I have now. So you don't know when it's going to happen. And you can't live your life in fear. I can't every day leave my house with my dog in a, in a wrapped in bubble wrap, like let's get to the car. I will be vigilant. I'll keep that in mind. But again, it was years ago. It's not gonna, it eventually slipped my mind. And it wasn't until I was watching it happen that I was like, oh, I've seen this before.
Right. I've seen this before.
Deja vu. So I think, let yourself off the hook a little bit. Don't beat yourself up about that. If you did not develop your intuition in
Or
order
act
to,
on
or
an
act
intuition.
on those messages that you got in order to prevent something or to extend something or, kind of find another way, that's okay. That may have not been your calling. I mean, maybe if
Right.
it was your calling, you not only would have had that intuitive information, but you would have been driven to do
That's
something
true. You would
about
have
it.
enjoyed, I haven't told you this, this because it was just the other day, but this kind of wraps into what we're talking about. We know I had the whole 9/11 experience June 30th
Right.
before it happened. And at the time, I was like, I can't call anybody to tell them this is going to happen. I literally looked like a nut. And I realized, and so did everybody on top of the Trade Center that day, think I was crazy.
Mm.
The other night, I was watching a podcast that my son asked me to watch with him about this well-known, fascinating, by the way, CIA agent who spent time in prison for like outing the CIA. And, this guy's fascinating. And he said in this podcast, we knew in advance that something was happening.
Mm.
We didn't know when.
Mm.
And he gave all the, historical things of what countries, this, that, things I knew nothing about.
Yeah.
And he's like, we were looking and trying to gather evidence. And here it is. How many years later? I looked at my son. I go, oh my gosh, there was somebody I could have called. And here I am feeling guilty decades later. How would I have known who to
Right,
call?
right.
But they actually knew. And I thought if I had told them everything that I saw and happened that day, maybe it could have helped them. So this is the other day I was feeling guilty about it. So there you go. I'm just like everybody else.
Yeah.
So you can't feel guilty about it because if there
Yeah.
was a number that I was supposed to call, I would have seen it on
Right.
a sign in Manhattan and I would have called the 800 number.
And as Freud says, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. You just see something. You just happen to be open to
That's
something
great.
at the right time and the right moment where or your conscious mind is not in reject mode. It happens to be more receptive and something floats to the surface in your intuition and you go, huh, look at that. That's funny or weird or sad.
Mhm.
And it goes away. And, you're not necessarily meant to put everything in your life on hold and, you know, drive that down into an answer. I think if you do have an experience like that and you wonder, am I supposed to do something about this? That is another question to pose from your conscious mind to your intuition. Because remember, this is a
Absolutely.
dialogue. Every
Mhm.
professional psychic medium will tell you, I have to back off with my rational mind, let information float from my non-rational mind, my intuition, into my rational mind, where I then have to interpret it and express it out through, if I'm an artist, through my painting, I'm painting a spirit face or my voice usually, or the cards that I'm flipping or whatever that might be. So if you have information and it unsettles you, or it will come through in a neutral way, but following that neutral kind of moment, you feel unsettled or disturbed, or I kind of feel like I could take action. It feels like it might fit somewhere. Hand it right back to your subconscious mind, right back to your intuition and say, tell me more. Or what else am I supposed to do with this? Or what's next? And wait,
Yep.
because it might be another 6 months before part B of that floats up, unless you, vigorously go and plumb your sixth sense to do that.
Agreed.
Agreed. Look at us. We don't often, well, we often do
We
agree. We
often
just,
do
but we
agree.
come at it from different ways.
It's weird, we do, but we end up at the same place.
So thank you again for your questions. We love to answer them. You know, this is such a humongous field. It's such a vast field, and we can talk about, and we have talked about everything from dreams to angel numbers to, you know, time slips to aliens and UFOs. There's so much in the paranormal field, in the ethereal field, and we like to make what's ethereal here in the material world so you can do something with it, because we're both really practical people. We make our living this way. We realize that we are straddling two worlds in a way, two mindsets in a way, and that they can inform one another and really make your life much more calm, much more enhanced. You have a lot more confidence. You won't second guess your decisions or wonder if you're worthy enough to go for something. So please, when you send us your questions, it gives us a focus and something to really dive deep on and give our personal experience with and the clients we've worked with, and to answer you directly. So you can email us at Ethereal Material Podcast, info@etherealmaterialpodcast.com, etherealmaterialpod@gmail. You can send us fan mail on Buzzsprout. You can also DM us on Instagram, TikTok. And we are on, our audio is on Spotify and Buzzsprout, Ethereal Material, and video is on YouTube, Ethereal Material. So thank you again for sending us your questions, and we look forward to answering more. In the meantime, keep believing,
keep questioning,
and keep in touch. Bye.